Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our session today. This is a Market Builder Office Hours session, and today we're going to be talking about social media planning for MSPs. So before we get started, there's just some legal slides that I have to show you all. Take a quick read. And just some reminders here. You are muted, and that's not because we don't want to hear from you, but it's because we want to make sure that you have the best experience possible with these office hours sessions. Please don't place this call on hold. We want to make sure that you are here for the whole thing. And please, if you have any questions, go ahead and use the question and answer panel, not the chat, the question and answer panel. And we are going to be asking questions throughout this session of our two speakers. So please feel free to ask any and all questions that you have. One final thing, this session is being recorded, and we will be sending out the recording in the next few days, and it will also appear in Market Builder. So who's the Market Builder team? Well, you have me, Tracy Trottier, Tara Bautista is on the line with us today, and we also are joined by Stephanie Hammond, our head sales and marketing nerd. We're all here to ensure that you have the best user experience possible with Market Builder, and that we are providing you with all the content that you need for social media success, as well as just general marketing success. So what's new in Market Builder? The team has been really, really busy. And if you haven't already seen this content, dive in and go ahead and get it. We have two brand new campaigns, one updated campaign, all focused on the topic of cybersecurity. First one is the cyber insurance campaign. This one is brand new, and this campaign will help you educate prospects and clients on the need for cyber insurance, as well as the role that your company will play when you're applying and maintaining adherence to the policy. We also have a full campaign. You asked for it, we've given it to you, a full campaign on email security. And we have also updated our cybersecurity awareness campaign. This campaign is loaded with content that you can use to help position yourself as a thought leader in security in your area. Now, we also have some very specialized campaigns that are available for our MSP partners in the UK, as well as Australia. And you're going to see more of these campaigns and more of this content start to appear over the next few months. We have some in the works right now for healthcare for Australia, the UK, and Canada. And I'm pleased to announce that we are also starting to provide some co-branded content in Market Builder. This is a brand new program that we started, and I know we've said all along, all the content in Market Builder is designed for you to pitch your services and position your services to your end users. But we do have some customers that have been asking for co-branded content. Again, we're just giving you what you need and the content that you're looking for. These are very specific pieces of content, as you can see here. There's a focus sheet on layered security, and there's two pieces of content for Cove data protection. These are co-branded, meaning they carry the Enable logo as well as your own. What do we have in development? New campaigns are coming in Dutch, German, and French for Canada, French-Canadian MSPs. We have a new campaign coming up that will help you position the value of cloud services. And we have, as I said earlier, we have the healthcare campaigns for MSPs in the UK, Canada, and Australia. We're also going to be updating several of our existing campaigns, specifically a la carte remote monitoring and managing Mac devices. And this is something you're going to see more of. We're going to be, in addition to creating 2 new campaigns every month, we're going to be updating some of the existing content that we have. So it's always fresh, and it's always the right content for you at the right time. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to the first of our guest speakers today, and I'm very happy to present to you Stephen McNulty. Stephen, it's over to you now.
Great, thank you, Tracy. All right. Everybody can see my screen there. Tracy, we good? Okay, so let you know who I am real quick. So I primarily focus on crisis communications and executive communications at Enable, but I've gotten here through 10 years of journalism and communications work that kind of have always had social media as a big chunk of my job. As many of you probably understand, in marketing and in communications, there's very small teams and lots to do. So I've done that in journalism, local government, healthcare, and now technology. What I want to focus on today is building the foundational presence and a strategy for a personal brand on social media. So you can follow all the best rules about the number of times to post, when to post, you can chase all the coolest trends, but if you don't have a laser focus on adding value in a very specific niche, then you're going to get lost in the noise. So what we'll focus on is how to identify that niche and put it into action when optimizing your profile and creating content. So one thing I'll add is what I'm going to focus on is I'm going to say you and your profile, but that could be your executive, that could be your spokesperson, or it could just be your brand. A lot of this translates over to a corporate or corporate or business page. But the main reason is because I want you to be the influencer and not buy the influencer. But really, it actually just works. People are more trustworthy. It shows off the people of your company. It puts a face and not just a graphic to the things that are being said. And that really works with people. And then in reality too, the algorithm chasing world that we live in, it works better to have other people saying it than it does having the brand page saying it. And I'll focus again primarily here on LinkedIn and why. There's a lot of reasons. LinkedIn is where business happens. And if you're doing B2B, I think that's got to be where you'll focus. So what makes an influencer? What does it take to be an influencer? Step one is identify that niche. Step two is make sure that your profile is optimized with that niche in mind. Then you generate a conversation around that niche, okay? So how do you find that niche? You need to know your lane, know your audience, and know your personality. So let's step through each of those. So knowing your lane is where you have the authority to speak. But also not just because, hey, that's what my job title says, but because they're your passions, they're your expertise that you dig into on the side or that you used to do as a business. What makes you unique? Do you have career achievements, certifications, or unique experiences that you can kind of just pull out of your back pocket and say, well, because of this, I carry a little bit of weight and can say this? Or do you have an outside the box approach to something that oftentimes is a good discussion because you do things differently than the status quo maybe? So something about this is you don't want to have unrelated ones here. You want to have them related. For example, I have social media experience growing brands in local government and B2B. And in that time, I also am specially trained in emergency and crisis response. So if I can align two of those, like B2B social media crisis response, that's great. But if we're trying to do all three at one time, right, and we're trying to sell technology products and how to do that best, and I'm also telling you how to, respond to an emergency, my page is going to be scattered and you're not going to find many people like me that are going to want to consume that content. Oops, sorry about that. Come on, why do I scroll? That always makes it harder. Let me just use my keyboard. So your audience, okay, step two. Some people think they might know this and come up with it anecdotally, but I highly encourage you to take a minute and look into the analytics the best you can. So you might find you have some really great analytics already available in Market Builder. If you have LinkedIn Premium, you can see them for your personal page. For a LinkedIn business page, you can break down followers by job function, industry, company size, seniority, location. You have a service that you use for your social media, a Sprinkler, a Hootsuite, or something like that. They'll have it. If any SEO research has been done for your company, that could be really helpful. Or maybe you don't have an audience yet, or you just want to do some of this research on your own. So I encourage you to go in, click through the profiles, the groups, competitors, customers, industry thought leaders, click on the hashtag, see what they're talking about, and kind of keep track of some of those things. What are they talking about? What questions are they asking? And also, what is the type of content that is doing best in those areas? Is it a video? Is it a graphic? Is it the carousels? Is it a question on a graphic? And again, just kind of take note of what those might be. And then understand what your personality is. Know yourself, know who you are, or again, your leader or your spokesperson. Are you a thought leader who gives perspectives, reactions, hot takes on things? Are you an expert in a function of an organization that's not necessarily an industry? Again, if you're doing this for yourself, marketing and communications is an example of that. HR people team, they're another example of that. They often talk about philosophies and ideologies and processes that can apply across different industries, but it's all within the HR, the marketing function. Or are you a subject matter expert that solves problems, gives tutorials, how-to guides? Perfect example of this is our head nerds. They are giving real how to do things, FAQs, things like this webinar. They're subject matter experts. And if you're a subject matter expert, you do your content differently than if you're an industry thought leader and you do different content. So I asked you 3 questions. What is your lane? Who is your audience? What is your personality? You've gone through all of that. What do you do with it? So for me, what I do is I make a matrix or a profile. I call it an influencer profile. This is a made up one based off of a couple of the different people that I've done this with at Enable. And so I've broken this down by the different, your lane, your different mediums, your audience, your keywords, your top channels. So I've got this created, and now I can go back to it when I'm looking to create content for this person, or when I'm reached out to and said, hey, we have a quote. We would like to get this person in an article. We would like to get this person on a podcast. And I look at these things, and if it doesn't check a box in each lane, audience, and personality, I don't think it's worth that person's time, because it's not niche enough for them to hit their target audience on social media. So step 1, we've identified our niche, but then how do we make sure we have the right profile to go with it? So I'll quickly take through a couple of my favorite tips. I could talk to you all about aspect ratios and pixel sizes and all of that, but this is one of my favorites. I call it the trifecta. I think it's a really, really good first place to differentiate yourself. I want you to think about your cover banner on LinkedIn, headshot, and headline. But again, this can translate across Twitter and others as a complementary story. You don't want them to just tell one thing. So if you have just your brand company on your cover photo, your headshot, and your title, for me, Strategic Communications Manager, Enable. What do you know about me? You know what I look like, you know my name, and you know that I'm the Strategic Communications Manager at Enable. But what I have here is an example of our good friend, Joe. What do we know about Joe? Well, let's look at his cover photo. We know he's a Star Wars fan. And if you're a Star Wars fan, there might even be a deeper meaning there. So that's a real connection. Next, we've got his headshot. So I will give you that this one is a difficult one for a lot of people to really capitalize on. And you can just go for the professional headshot. But if you look at what Joe's is, it's him. He looks like a speaker. He looks like he's on a keynote, or he's a moderator or something like that. It's a little bit different. If you can slide your profession in there a little bit with a uniform or background or something like that, speaker, again, really helpful. And then his headline. There's a whole lot more there, right? It says, tech media entrepreneur, angel investor, alleged MSSP and MSP market expert. Email is the best way to reach me. I guarantee some of that came out of his keyword research targeting his niche. And in the 5 seconds you looked at his profile, you know a whole lot about him, a lot more about him than you do about me. Strategic Communications Manager at Enable, Star Wars guy who's a panelist or an expert in tech media. He's an entrepreneur. He's an angel investor, MSSP and MSP. And he wants to be reached out to on email. Big difference between the two of us there. Dig a little deeper in there on the headline. Joe nailed it really well. And I think a headline is that first bit of this, okay? So many people just have their job title there, but that's not always the reason I want to follow you. That's not the reason. I want to follow you because of what you do, not who you are. So Chris Massey, he's works with us here. His title right now is Senior Product Marketing Manager. Any of you want to follow the Senior Product Marketing Manager? Maybe not, but helping MSPs grow with enterprise class and services and solutions. Now you might want to follow them. Joe and Kevin, they've got entrepreneur in theirs. Chris had MSPs, grow, enterprise class services, solutions. Those are keywords. Those are very intentional. They will show up on other people's feeds because of that. So when writing this, go back to your profile and identify those keywords.
Hey, Stephen, quick question for you from the audience. Would you do that for a business as well? So if you were setting up your business page for your MSP, would you put your tagline in there?
100%. It's 99%. If you have a really good tagline that has, that is your tagline should be SEO targeted almost, right? Search engine optimized in a way, right? Kind of hitting those keywords, saying what you do, right? You're not just IT capabilities. If you need to have that niche as a business page, right? So like, again, I don't want to say you should definitely put it there if it's not already the best thing you have. But I would treat your business pages section like this about section at the top with this same thought. Target your
Awesome.
niche, know who you're going after.
Awesome.
And a phrase that I like to say that, and I think, again, you can use this to your company, what I like to have in the back of my mind is, I follow so-and-so because they blank. I followed Chris because he helps MSPs grow, not because he's a senior product marketing manager. And you could say the same for a company. I follow so-and-so because they do IT. I don't think that's what they're going to say, right? I follow so-and-so because they provide healthcare IT, dental offices IT, a specific type or expertise or whatever it might be, or because they empower me to do this. That's where you got to give that reason, that real reason.
Thanks.
And this is a quick one, but make sure, especially for people that haven't really done a lot of optimizing their profile, make sure you have that your name in your full name in your URL, and you might have to add something to it. Mine is like -PR because there's other Stephen McNulty's out there. It's really going to help you in search, and you want your name or your spokesperson, that you want this to be among the top places that come up because you're controlling it when someone Googles you, not an article that someone else wrote or an old about me page on a company that you don't work for anymore, something like that. So we know our niche. We're now got this pretty page. How do we get the conversation? We leverage that niche, and we're going to use Market Builder as one of the tools to do it, of course. So let's take all that great information and find it in Market Builder. We're looking for our lane, our audience, and our personality. And again, be very, very picky and double down on your niche. So write a Market Builder, go to your filters, be very picky with those topics. Let's go back to the guy Colin I was working, cybersecurity. There we go, found one. Now I go in there and I look at the campaign, and let's translate that across. My lane, my audience, my personality. Key messages, are these the things that I or my executive have the authority to say? If I say it, does it hold any weight? Look at the keywords and the target persona. Does that match what you've identified as your audience? And then look again at those key messages and the collateral, and do they align with the personality and the thought leadership style and the type of content that you produce? If you're a thought leadership person and it's how to fix something, is that your thing? If you're how to fix something and it's the future of work, is that your thing? Figure that out. If it checks all three of those boxes, that's the content you're going to want to dig deeper into leveraging. Okay, but it's not just about finding the content. It can be really close. You can tweak one or two, you can tweak things in there to get it in your lane, get your audience, get your personality if other boxes are already filled. So swapping out some words to make sure your keywords are in there, taking a slightly different angle to better address your audience or be in your lane. And then, of course, that little slight communication can be huge. And then also, this is just a moment to say, tag companies, tag partners, tag people. Huge, huge, huge. Going to help you. A lot of people forget to tag. Okay, so one little part about it. So doesn't work without engaging. We were just actually talking about this before this started. You have to engage on social media, especially LinkedIn. And when you do, especially on LinkedIn, it will work so well. And I oftentimes recommend people start here, okay, before they even really start creating content. And if you start here, it's actually going to give you more information to help identify your niche as well. So it's important that you're regularly commenting, not just liking and sharing other people's content. You're joining groups, you're following influencers, and you're adding your connections. Building that network in parallel to producing content and continuing that is how you really scale. And something I hear a lot is, well, I see all the same content or the same people. And that's just because your network isn't big enough. Our CEO said that to me. And he's worked essentially for this company for the last 20 years. And he's not super active on LinkedIn. I'm like, yeah, John, because your entire network is in this room right now. So let's go out, let's find other people, let's find influencers in those areas. And as soon as you start to do that, you'll really start to see that new content in your feed. It'll be a little bit more entertaining to keep scrolling through, and you'll get new ideas, you'll have new places. It will help you tremendously. So I plead with you to get on there and engage. So you do these three things and you will lift your voice, and in turn, lift the brand and the voice of your company. Because you want to be the influencer, not buy the influencer. And that's all I have.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Stephen. Now, if anybody has any other questions about any of the topics that Stephen's talked about, please go ahead and use the question and answer panel and go ahead and ask your questions. Now I'm going to turn it over to our next special guest, and now we're going to hear from Paul Green. And I'm sure many of you know Paul, and some of you may have even been working with him or are working with him now. So welcome, Paul. It's really great to have you here today.
Thank you very much. That was awesome, Stephen, talking about personal branding on LinkedIn, because in about 12 seconds time, we're going to pick up some of the things that you just said, and we're going to take it a step further. We're going to talk about how you can use something called LinkedIn newsletters as a very specific way of reaching your audience, engaging with your audience and warming them up, and getting them hopefully to look at you as an MSP when they are ready to move on to someone else. Let me tell you briefly a little bit about me. So my name is Paul Green. I'm an MSP marketing expert, and I'm the founder of the MSP Marketing Edge. So we work with more than 700 MSPs all over the world. In fact, America, the US is our biggest market, but we also have a ton of free stuff as well, including this, and this is hot off the presses. So Enable, I think this is pretty much the first time, or only the second time I've announced this on a webinar anywhere. So this is an exclusive for Enable. We have a free magazine. It's called the MSP Marketing Magazine. When I say free, it's free and we ship it to you for free. There's not going to be many of them. We've just got one at the moment. But if you want to get the free copy shipped to your house at zero cost to you, you don't have to put a credit card in. There's nothing stupid like that. If you just go to paulgreensmspmarketing.com, that's Paul Greens with an S, Paul Greens mspmarketing.com, you can see where to get a free magazine, and it's a learning hub there with tons of advice, and we've got links to our YouTube and all sorts of other stuff like that. So I do want to talk today about LinkedIn, and we're going to take what Stephen was talking about there with personal branding and go further down the practical route. So within the next 15 minutes, you will know exactly how to set up your LinkedIn newsletters. You'll know why you need to get them set up, and you'll know what the benefits will be. So let's first of all talk about what exactly LinkedIn newsletters are. So LinkedIn newsletters, it's something that LinkedIn has set up within the last about 12-15 months or so. And to understand why LinkedIn has done this, we have to look at the history of LinkedIn, where it's come from and where it's going. So you probably know right now that the owner of LinkedIn is Microsoft. And Microsoft has actually done an incredibly good job of enhancing and changing and boosting, pushing LinkedIn. So they acquired it, I can't remember exactly when, it was about 7 years ago, something like that. And if you remember LinkedIn back in the old days, it was the digital version of your real life network. And you may remember back in the old days that you could report someone for trying to connect with you on LinkedIn when you didn't actually know them in real life. That's what it was. Now, obviously, there is only a finite amount of things you could do with that kind of network. So under Microsoft's ownership, they have transformed LinkedIn slowly and carefully. They've transformed it into the B2B version of Facebook. And some of the changes that they've brought in the last year have just enhanced that. And they've made LinkedIn a much better place. I think Stephen is absolutely right that LinkedIn is the first place that you should go. If you're not doing any marketing within your MSP right now, make LinkedIn the first place to go to get started. So what they have done is they have enhanced the people-to-people aspect of LinkedIn. If you go and look at the LinkedIn feed on your cell phone, you'll scroll and scroll and scroll, and what you'll see is more and more updates from people than from businesses. So it's exactly the same as Facebook. Facebook did exactly the same change a couple of years ago, where it was prioritizing what people were writing versus what businesses were writing. So LinkedIn has become more people focused. LinkedIn's algorithm, I'm going to talk about the algorithm a lot in the next 10 minutes, but LinkedIn's algorithm tends to focus in more intently on content that other people are engaging with. In fact, one of the ways to reach more people on LinkedIn is to get people engaging with your content. And I've got some suggestions for you in a second. But the other thing that it has done is it has subtly changed itself, or is in the process of changing itself into a content driven platform. So LinkedIn used to be very dry. It was all sort of just work updates. It was, sort of in the old days, Facebook, the awful times of Facebook were where you could poke people and you had to put your current status. And then people started doing things like putting photos of them having a meal out. And that, I mean, some people still do that now. And LinkedIn was the kind of the business equivalent of that. And it was a bit boring. It was a great place to go and see your network and talk to your network, but it was a bit dull. And LinkedIn these days is becoming more of a content platform. So if you go and look within your feed, you will see some outlying content. In fact, that might be one of the first 2 or 3 pieces that you see. Typically, the more interesting content that someone puts on, the more engagement it gets from their connections. And when LinkedIn sees that it's got more engagement, it shows more of that content to more people. This, by the way, is exactly how Facebook works. So LinkedIn is, well, it's kind of the Microsoft modus operandi, isn't it? Which is look at what the market leader is doing and then create their own version of it. And that's what they've done very successfully with LinkedIn. So the LinkedIn algorithms work in very similar ways to the Facebook algorithms with a few subtle differences. But LinkedIn is now all about content. In fact, they made a change 12 months, maybe 15 months ago, around about the same time that they started focusing more in on content, whereby you used to be able to connect to a ton of people every day. Like you could literally attempt to connect with up to, I think it was like 100 people a day, which is very much a quantity over quality approach. And slowly but surely, they have been tweaking the algorithm so that these days they want you to focus on quality over quantity. Now, I forget the exact limit because I'm not in there, testing the limits myself every day. I have a team of people to do this for me. But I believe right now you are the maximum number of people you can connect to on a daily basis or attempt to connect to is somewhere between about 10 and 20. And you certainly wouldn't want to be trying to connect to 20 people 7 days a week every week, because at some point LinkedIn is going to say, hey, hang on a second here. We are about quality, not quantity down. Slow it down. So it's gone from being originally about just your online version of your offline network. Then it went into a free-for-all under Microsoft's initial ownership where anyone could connect to anyone. And now it's kind of sunk somewhere in the middle, whereby, yes, you can still connect to people and try and grow your network. But now we have a new thing. That new thing is called followers. So I have about 7,500 connections on LinkedIn, and they're all MSPs or wonderful vendors, people at Enable or other vendors out there, but it's entirely within the channel. And then about 37 weeks ago, and I know exactly how long ago it was because I've just published tomorrow I'm publishing my 37th edition of my LinkedIn newsletter. But 37 weeks ago, I switched my account from being a traditional LinkedIn account to being in creator mode. And this is something that you may choose to do so that you can take advantage of these LinkedIn newsletters that I'm about to tell you about. Now, at the point I switched on creator mode, yes, people could still connect with me, but actually LinkedIn was more interested in getting people to follow me. And I now have around about 2,500 followers. So about 7,500 connections, 2,500 followers. There's going to be some crossover between those two figures. And I don't currently have a way to analyze and see what the crossover is. But I can guarantee there will be some people following me on LinkedIn who are not actually connected to me. Again, this is very similar to how Facebook works, where you can, I think it's the other way around. You can stay friends with someone, but you don't have to see their stuff on Facebook. On LinkedIn, you can see someone's stuff, but you don't have to be connected to them. Now, this is great for people like Richard Branson, Elon Musk, the really high profile people, because previously, and this may still be the case, LinkedIn had a maximum connection limit of 10,000 people. And some of those, high, really, really very famous people were hitting the connection limits. Well, now they can have an unlimited number of followers while having a more realistic connection limit. But how does that affect you as an MSP? Well, the difference between connections and followers is you can move into being a content creator. And one of the things that Stephen was just talking about with your personal branding was staying in your lane and talking about things that your target audience is really interested in. That's what you can use LinkedIn newsletters for. Now, let me explain exactly how LinkedIn newsletters works and what the benefits are, and then we'll show you how to get set up. So LinkedIn newsletters, first of all, it's a bit confusing, the name. LinkedIn's called it LinkedIn newsletters. And traditionally, when you think of a newsletter, you think of a collection of pieces of content coming together in a single thing, don't you? I mean, you might look at something like that and say, well, that's a bit like a newsletter. It's got lots and lots of different pieces of content in. LinkedIn newsletters does not work that way. A LinkedIn newsletter is where you publish an article on a regular basis. We'll cover that off later, how regularly you should do it, on a regular basis. And each article you publish comes under the umbrella of your LinkedIn newsletter. So calling it a LinkedIn newsletter is kind of a misnomer, really, but that's the name that they've gone with. What you're actually doing with the LinkedIn newsletter is you are publishing an article on a regular basis on LinkedIn, and it is gathering all of those articles together and calling it a LinkedIn newsletter. Now, you might look at that and think, well, what's the point of doing that? Let me tell you the point. There are two massive benefits. Firstly, currently LinkedIn is paying LinkedIn newsletters an intense amount of algorithmic attention. So on LinkedIn, as with Facebook, as with Twitter, as with all of the other social networks, it's all about the algorithm. It's the algorithm that decides what people see. And as I said earlier, the algorithm does very smart things like when you post a piece of content, it will show that content to a sample of your audience. And if your audience jump on it and start liking it and sharing it and commenting on it, it tells the algorithm that this is popular content. And so it shows that content to more people. That's the basis of how all social media algorithms work. Now, what happens over time is the programmers at LinkedIn will tweak the algorithm to give more attention to the things that are important to them. So right now, there will be some vice president of newsletters at LinkedIn, and he or she has managed to persuade the programming team, the algorithm team, to put more algorithmic attention onto the newsletter. What that means is when you set up a newsletter, LinkedIn puts a great deal more of its resources into promoting your LinkedIn newsletter than it does other posts that you are currently posting. Now, that's not going to stay the same forever. That will change at some point. There will be a new product or there will be a change in focus, but it's been that way for at least 15 months, about 12 to 15 months. And I can't see that changing in the future, although I never know when it will change. None of us do. It will just suddenly change one day. So that's the first benefit, is more of your LinkedIn newsletter content is going to get in front of the people you want to reach, which is great. That's the first benefit. The second benefit is almost bigger than that. See, the second benefit is when you publish an article on LinkedIn under a LinkedIn newsletter umbrella, it emails that article out to everyone who is following your newsletter. So I do my newsletter every Thursday. I write them myself. I either write fresh content or I repurpose a piece of old content, as I will be doing tomorrow because I've got a busy day filming tomorrow. I go into LinkedIn, I write my article, and when I press publish, it doesn't just publish it on in the news feed of my followers, it emails them. So let's just think about that. I said to you earlier, I've got 2,500 people who are following my LinkedIn newsletter. That means I now have a second email database. So every week I send out an email to my audience. I've got about 5,000 MSPs in my email CRM, and I send them a newsletter and information about my podcast every week. But then on Thursdays, I send out my LinkedIn newsletter, and LinkedIn emails those people for me. Now, here's something I know about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft. Microsoft controls billions and billions of mailboxes. I would bet you 10 of your dollars that the deliverability of the LinkedIn email is off the scale compared to my deliverability. Now, all of my audience, like literally 99% of my audience, uses Microsoft products to receive emails from me, which is a bit of a pain for me because me and my domain and Microsoft have a bit of a love-hate relationship where they are very quick to filter me into spam folders, and we have to spend quite a lot of money and time and effort every year to overcome that. But I never have to worry about my LinkedIn newsletter email because I don't have any control over it at all, but I know the deliverability of that is going to be off the scale. The goal here is to get your content in front of the people who could go on to buy from you in the future. You know, LinkedIn by itself, LinkedIn newsletters by itself is not going to make someone want to choose your MSP, but it's one of the multiple touch points that you want to build up with your audiences. You want someone to see your posts on LinkedIn, get your LinkedIn newsletter, read your email from LinkedIn, get a message from you on LinkedIn, get something from you in the mail, get an email from you, get a phone call from a member of your team, you know, see something else, that perhaps a direct mail letter that you've sent to them. All of these are different marketing tactics that you can use to feed the marketing strategy of having multiple touch points with your prospects. You see, people only buy when they're ready to buy. And the problem that you and I have is we don't know when they're ready to buy. We literally don't have a clue. So what we have to do is to try to hit as many targeted prospects as possible, as many of those people that Stephen was talking about earlier, and hit as many of them as we can with as many marketing messages as we can. No, sorry, with the same marketing message, but delivered via multiple channels. And what we're hoping for is that the day that they wake up and they think, do you know what, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready. I've had enough. I'm falling out of love with my incumbent MSP. I think it's time to talk to some other MSPs. That's exactly the day that you want to be in front of them. You want to be top of mind, because all you've got to do is get them to book a 15-minute video call with you, and you can do everything else. That's what Market Builder is here to do. That's what my program is here to do. That's what everyone's programs are here to do. It's to help you get the right person at the right time to book a short video call with you to talk about their business. And from there, you know the process from there. And of course, there's lots of places you can go to get help with that. So I know I've only got a couple of minutes left. Let me just go into a few setup things. So what you do to get started with LinkedIn newsletters. Now, the very first thing to do is to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is complete. Stephen touched on this earlier with some really, really good advice. Stephen, I may steal the trifecta from you. If you see me talking publicly about the trifecta in a few weeks' time, then that came from you and I won't credit you. So thank you for that. So the trifecta is a great idea of the banner, the headline and the description. Stephen's absolutely right. That's 80% of the work there. 80% of your connections will go with you or connect with you or follow you based on what they see in the trifecta. The rest of it is just gravy. It's nice to do. The general rule with your profile is you give LinkedIn what it wants. If it wants you to fill in some skills, fill in some skills. If it wants qualifications or recommendations, just give it what it wants. That's the general rule with social media, is you give them what you want. Now, this is a one-time job. Yes, you need to keep it up to date. That's, you know, a couple of times a year, but there's no point spending any time on LinkedIn unless you complete your profile. The good news is it takes an hour to complete your profile. The most time sensitive thing is just getting a decent photo of yourself done. And that was a great photo we saw of Joe earlier, but you know, just a good standard studio photo you can get done for $100 at a local photographer. That will do. And you could probably get one done tomorrow or Friday if you really wanted to. So get your profile done. And the second step then is you need to turn on something called creator mode. Now, I'm not going to talk you through that step by step, A, because of time, and B, because you could just Google it. It's really easy to do. It's a one-time thing. You just need to be aware that it will change your LinkedIn account. So you go from having a traditional LinkedIn account into a creator mode account. So the advantages of that are it switches on the ability to do LinkedIn newsletters. It also switches on the ability to do LinkedIn Live, which is where you broadcast live over LinkedIn. Now, that gets a lot of algorithmic attention as well. We don't see many of those. So the people that do them, they tend to get a lot more attention. And I bet you $10 again that LinkedIn will have other creator tools that it is finalizing right now that will be available to us at some point in the future. So that's a good thing. Downsides are that you have that change. So you don't just have connections, you have connections and followers. So if, for example, you weren't 100% sure that you were going to do a LinkedIn newsletter regularly, then you wouldn't do it, because the downside is you'd have people following you and getting nothing from you. This is one of those things that is no point doing the switch unless you absolutely know that you're going to do this week in, week out. Until it stops being of benefit to you. So go Google how to switch on creator mode. That takes about 5 minutes. What takes then another 20 minutes or so is setting up your newsletter. So when you switch on creator mode, it then gives you the ability to and again, you can just Google exactly how to do this. It's relatively simple. It gives you the ability to set up LinkedIn newsletters. Now, that's a one-time job. You need to come up with a name for your newsletter. Please don't call it something boring. Call it something interesting. The most interesting one that I have about 20 MSPs newsletters. They're all MSPs that I work with. Some of them use my content and repurpose it. Some of them do their own content. One of my MSPs in the UK called Christian, his entire business is branded around Star Trek. It's something to see. You've never seen anything like it. So his LinkedIn newsletter is called From the Captain's Chair, as in, the captain of the Starship Enterprise. Now that's a very, love it or hate it thing, but that suits him and it suits his branding. And actually Christian is doing very well. His marketing is killing it right now because he's been doing the same thing consistently for a number of years, and that consistency counts for a lot. But then a lot of other MSPs just call it Tech Tips Tuesday or Tech Tips Thursday. I think you could be a lot more interesting and entertaining with it. You could try and build in your local area. If you're based in, Denver, can you work the word Denver in there? Denver technology newsletter. You have to remember that ordinary people don't care that much about technology. Sadly, what they care about is what it can do for them. So do have a think about your name. I don't know off the top of my head if you can change the name of your newsletter. I'd have to check that. My gut feel says you can't. Just be aware of that once you've set it up, you may not be able to change it. There's then a little description, just another 50 words or so. It has to be a logo as well, not your logo, your newsletter logo, 300 pixels by 300 pixels off the top of my head. Just go and do it in Canva or get someone on Upwork or Fiverr to do it. And then once you've done that, your setup is done. And what's a bit confusing is LinkedIn then doesn't tell you how to actually send a newsletter. It's really simple. To send a newsletter, you go into your normal LinkedIn feed, and instead of starting a post, you start an article. So you may have seen that when you go for LinkedIn, you've got the option to do a photo or a video, or you can start a post, or you can start an article. Articles has been there for years, but now articles is part of LinkedIn newsletters. So once you've done this one-time setup, then you go and you start your article, and that is what will be emailed out and will become your LinkedIn newsletter. It really is as simple as that. Now, again, I don't believe you can edit your article once it has been published. So to do make sure I don't believe, I can't see an easy way to do that, although they are changing it all of the time. So do make sure you're happy with your article before you publish it. But remember, when you publish it, it will go on your feed and it will be emailed out to your followers. And the first time you launch your newsletter, LinkedIn will work very hard to get a lot of your connections, and indeed some of your connections to subscribe to your newsletter, to become a follower. So make sure that first edition that you send out is one of the best pieces of content that you have got. And from there on, you just have to write something on a regular basis. Now, as part of your setup, you have to decide how often you're going to do your newsletter. I reckon weekly. Weekly is a much easier thing to stick to than monthly, even though it's more work. I know, for example, Thursdays is LinkedIn newsletter day. So if I'm doing something like I'm doing a whole day of filming in the studio tomorrow, I can't write anything because I'll be too tired. So I can just repurpose a bit of content, at breakfast time tomorrow. And for me, Thursdays are LinkedIn newsletter days. That's the kind of habit that you want to get your brain into. Now, in our last 30 seconds, let me just address this question, which is, of course, what do we write about? Well, if you are a content creator, you're the kind of person that gets excited by creating your own content, which is about 0.01% of MSPs, then obviously you go with your own content. If you're not, there's sort of two options open to you. The first is to repurpose someone else's content. So, for example, I'll give my MSPs on the MSP Marketing Edge, I give them a syndicated blog article every week, which they can put onto their website and or use for their LinkedIn newsletter, and many of them do. So they're just taking content and they're putting it on there. I'm sure within Market Builder there is plenty of content that you could repurpose into LinkedIn newsletters. And to the best of our knowledge today, there are no duplicate content penalties for using content on LinkedIn that someone else has used. You'll know that if you do that on your website, Google comes along and Google slaps you at some point, especially if you're a repeat offender. But so far as we know today, there's no penalty for doing duplicate content on LinkedIn. So your first option is to go and repurpose content you get from somewhere else. Don't steal content. I mean, well, that's actually the second option, is to find someone else's content and rewrite it, or get a writer off Fiverr or Upwork to rewrite it for you. But I think a better option, and this is option number 3, is to originate your own content based on what your actual clients and the users you support are saying. Go and have a look through all of your tickets. What are the things they're saying? And I don't mean what are the trends in what's broken, but what are the problems that they're coming across right now? What's frustrating them? What's keeping them up at night? What scares them? What do they want? What are they excited about for 2023? And then you could go, when you do QBRs, quarterly business reviews, or strategic reviews, as I prefer to do them. If you go and sit face to face with your existing clients and you're talking about the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, and you're asking them all of those questions, what do they want to achieve with their business? What excites them? What are they scared of? All of your notes from QBRs could potentially become a subject for your LinkedIn newsletter, because the best LinkedIn newsletter subjects are not about technology per se, they're about how technology helps business. So that's pretty much it from me. If you have got any questions, please do post them, and I will hand back so we can finish off the webinar.
Thanks so much, Paul. Wow, this was a great session, and I have quite a few questions here to get through. So the first one, and happy to have you guys have a little bit of discussion on this while we get ready for one more guest. How regular do you consider post regularly? Is that daily, weekly, monthly? I get that question a lot from our partners who get into Market Builder, and they're using Market Builder for their social media. For a lot of people, this is really the first time they're really diving into social media. Then the other question, kind of follow up to that, is how often do you respond to people on LinkedIn?
Sure, I can answer both of those. I'll do them very quickly. The short answer to how often to post is daily, at least 5 days a week, ideally 7 days a week. And the reason for posting daily is social media is disposable. Once your post is gone, it's gone. It's not like LinkedIn goes back and pushes it up again. So you want to post something every day, but be mindful of what day of the week it is. If you're posting some kind of boring technology content on a Sunday morning, no one cares, whereas you can afford to go a little more personal on a Sunday. In fact, what we've noticed is the more personal content on LinkedIn gets 10, 20, 30 times the engagement than boring business content does. So absolutely. In fact, what I recommend is you post some of your own personal content once or twice a week, whenever you've got something that's appropriate. The rest of the days you use what we call canned content. So that's the kind of stuff that you get from Market Builder or myself or other vendors. That's pre-written content. That's never going to be as good as your own personal content, but it is better than no content at all. And to answer the second question about engagement, you answer every single comment, every single one. The reason being, the more engagement LinkedIn can see on your posts, the more it will show your posts. And it has a memory as well. It knows if you're an engaging person or not an engaging person. Do not ever comment on your own article first. That's the one golden rule, because that's bad for the algorithm. The algorithm can see if you're commenting on your own post, and that works against you. Let me give you a pro tip. This is something I've never revealed outside of my group of MSPs I work with. If you're in a networking group with other business owners, so I don't mean an MSP group. We don't want other MSPs commenting on your content. But let's say you're in like a BNI or a networking group, or you've just got some friends, who are business owner friends. Set up a little WhatsApp group so that when you post something on LinkedIn, you can WhatsApp each other and say, "I've just done a new post. Can you go and comment?" Now you have to be careful not to do like the same people every time, because LinkedIn will detect that. But what's cool is, let's say I posted something today and you go straight onto my post, or you go onto LinkedIn and you see my post and you comment on it, and then you've done the first comment. I can reply to that. Many more people will see that post. You just have to make sure you do it in a very organic way. So as I say, don't go straight to the post clicking a link. That's not organic. But you could go onto LinkedIn, go onto the LinkedIn app, and scroll down the newsfeed until you see the piece of content I just commented, and then comment on it. So actually setting up almost like a comment network can be a very smart thing to do, so long as you're organic with it.
Interesting. Stephen, any comments on how regular should be? And you're muted.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't always quite get 7 days. Some days I don't feel that I have the right piece for a Saturday and I let it slide, is probably what happens most. And that's not me. I'm not very good at it. But for those that I do it for professionally, I should say. And what I'd say too, for like a business page, I don't think you should be afraid to do a couple, 2, maybe 3 times in one day is not a problem. Max, really where I would go on a business page that has significant followers if you have that base. And to echo the canned content thing, I think a lot of people are afraid to reuse something, and especially the collateral, the graphic, the video, the article, whatever it might be, with a different caption, for lack of a better, different post is super, super helpful. Again, not every day. You don't use the same one twice in a week, maybe, but go back 10 days. And especially if you can look at your analytics and say, hey, this did pretty well for me. I can tell you that, again, this is just speaking for business pages, but, 2 top 10 posts for Enable this year is the same video, 10 days apart, written slightly different. And another 2 are, for an obvious reason, it was our anniversary of 1 year going public, but it's the 2 posts on the same day on the same topic, but written very differently. One was a collage, 8 different photos. One was just a graphic, hashtag differently, targeted differently, and they're 2 of our top 10 posts on the whole year.
Interesting.
So it's possible. And the last thing I would say too with that is the quality over quantity, always quality, right? But the things are changing. You have to understand too, the algorithms are always changing, right? And so what Paul was talking about, I agree. I call it the TikTokification. You'll hear it sometimes, where it's interest. It's interest, interest, interest. They are better at feeding you as the consumer what you're interested in better than they or more so than they used to only give you what you follow, right? We don't choose as much what we see on an Instagram reel or even our Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn as often as we used to. It's outsiders fed to us. And so you can get one of those and they can go really far. And then if your profile is right, that post that went quote unquote viral for you drove a lot of people to that right profile. That can make a huge difference. So be consistent, because you can see one really spike in the new way that the TikTokification of the algorithm.
One of the other questions we get asked, that I get asked a lot, is what day of the week is the best day to post on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter? And you can find 1,000,001 opinions on what day is best. And I like to tell people it's any day that ends with Y. It's whatever works best for your company, for your organization, for you. And there really is no, I really do not believe that any longer those best days, worst days, etc., are applicable, especially on LinkedIn, where you're seeing more and more content on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm laughing here because literally 1 hour ago, I had an email from LinkedIn and it said, Paul, here are the best days to post. Posts when your followers are active. According to the last month, the email says, our data shows that your audience is most active on the following days. Number 1, Wednesday. Number 2, Tuesday. Number 3, Thursday. Which is just a random email to get from LinkedIn. But clearly they're trying to answer that question. I'll bet if Stephen had a version of the same email, I bet your days will be slightly different, because exactly what Stephen was saying is that we don't choose what we see in LinkedIn or Facebook or anything. It chooses for us. If you want to see this, go and look at your Facebook and look at a friend's Facebook feed. And it's when you look at other people's Facebook feeds, it's weird, because mine is utterly in tune with what I'm interested in, which is in this order: the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Doctor Who, if you even know what that is, marketing, business, cats, right? That's all I'm interested in. Whereas Stephen obviously has much more interesting things, and his Facebook would literally be foreign to me. And that all the social media networks are getting better and better and better at that. So I agree. I think the answer is, don't overthink it, just post content. Because actually most MSPs shouldn't even be thinking those kind of questions of what days, what times, how many characters should I have in a headline? Because unless you're literally, this is your full-time job doing social media, you really don't want to worry about that. What you want to do is just make sure you're getting content out on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I say TikTok knows me better than I know me some days. They really do. Like, I learn things I start to think about things. I'm like, oh my, I started seeing this a lot. Am I interested in? Because they're getting that good. And if you're the content out there that's pushing about whatever problem, because that's what you want to target, your audience has, and you just keep saying, here's my solution to your problem, here's my solution to your problem, here's my solution to your problem, TikTok's going to figure out who has that problem for you and feed it to them. And before you know it, it's going to something's going to take off and it'll work really well.
You just mentioned TikTok. Should MSPs be using every social media platform? Which one should they be avoiding, in your opinions? In your opinion?
Let me answer that. TikTok is massive right now. It's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. It's actually a great platform, but MSPs, 99.9999% of MSPs shouldn't bother with TikTok because the vast majority of the audience of TikTok is not the business owners and managers that you want to reach. So I think the answer to should I use this social media network or not is answered by, are the average consumers that are using it, are they the people you want to reach? So let's take Instagram. If you want to reach restaurants, retail, hospitality businesses, they use Instagram for their own marketing. Therefore, you would use Instagram to reach them because the chances are the decision makers are on Instagram every day doing some marketing. So it's a great way to reach them. In fact, maybe they're starting to use TikTok, but for most MSPs, LinkedIn and Facebook in that order. Everyone should be using LinkedIn every day. Facebook is good as the universal. Facebook is not being used by the Gen Zs, and the Gen Zs are sort of getting up to teenage, late teenage, early adults, but they're not using Facebook. But that's not our problem today, because the people we want to reach who are in their 30s, their 40s, and their 50s, they are using LinkedIn and they are using Facebook. And my advice, and Stephen, please do disagree with me if you do, but my advice is just to stick to those two platforms. Oh, and maybe Twitter if you love Twitter. If you don't love Twitter, then don't bother with it. But if you're the kind of person whose idea of fun is using Twitter, then just use Twitter as well. Because if you've got passion for a social network, then you'll use it more.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's good. Look, LinkedIn, do it. If you're doing it as your job, like what I do a job, I do a thing, I want to make money. This is my, I have to do it, right? LinkedIn. Facebook maybe after that, that's without a doubt. You start to build a system. You start to have your own podcast, as Paul might. You start to have a team that's able to turn videos and you get to that scale. TikTok might be your place, and I would peg something to look out for, especially in this world, is YouTube Shorts. They're going to go after TikTok, and remember Google. And I would say this again about it's not our problem yet, but the younger generation is using TikTok as Google. They search things on TikTok more than they search things anywhere else. And so again, not our problem yet, but Google or YouTube is in that same sense, because they're searching TikTok because it's TikTok, but they're also searching TikTok because they would rather watch a video about how to do it. And so again, to tie it back really quickly, some of that goes to what is your personality. If you're a thought leader, and you're writing newsletters, beautiful. If you're a how to do it, make sure you're writing those newsletters. You're a subject matter expert, you want to write newsletters differently, right? And then maybe you're making how-to videos. Well, that's YouTube. That's great, right? Like that, and maybe LinkedIn, but you might have more success with the video on YouTube and taking the video into a newsletter, and that's your LinkedIn. So it's a big rabbit hole. But look at the analytics, do a little bit of research, and then just like on your niche of this is my focus of a subject, I think we all have to realize how thin we can actually be spread and focus the same kind of thing on social media. What's the right one for me? Probably
Awesome.
LinkedIn, and then focus.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to turn the stage over to Stephanie Hammond for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to wrap things up because we're almost at the top of the hour, and I don't want I want Stephanie to have her
my plug. Get my plug in. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Very happy to have kind of the last couple of minutes before we sign off today. Just to let you know of some upcoming sales and marketing office hours and boot camps that I have planned. So I'm done for the month of October. I've delivered a couple of boot camps and I did my office hours yesterday, but my next set coming up in November. November 15th is my next set of business office hours. So I always encourage any MSP that wants to register for my office hours, send in your questions in advance so that I can put together the best response possible. And then for my upcoming boot camps, I have 3 coming up in November. The first one is cracking the code to growing your MSP. We should all be in our planning stages for 2023, and this boot camp is really meant to kind of help you with your planning exercises. Every MSP should have a roadmap that they should be following. They should have metrics that they should be benchmarking themselves against and they should be following. And I go through in that boot camp, if this is an exercise that you haven't been so diligent in completing in the past, I take you through kind of how to put a roadmap together and some benchmarking metrics to get you started. So that's on November 1st. And then very appropriate to our conversation today, November 17th, I start again at the top of the marketing and sales funnel with lead gen, cracking the code to growing to lead gen part 1. This is building your marketing strategy, you know, exactly what we're talking about today. And then November 22nd, cracking the code to lead gen part 2, building your telesales strategy. Because you did hear Paul say, you know, different touch points to help with your lead gen, and doing proactive calls into your virtual audience to commercialize those is one of those touch points. So if you don't have a telesales strategy for your MSP, the bootcamp that I'm delivering on the 22nd, and I'm in the middle of updating it now, so it's fresh new content from Empower, then that's something that you may want to register. So I have a couple of QR codes there so that you can quickly register. Any questions, just reach out and I can provide additional information.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. And just as a final reminder, please follow Market Builder on LinkedIn if you aren't already. We post regularly with not only content updates, but some great articles on marketing and more. And now I'm trying to figure out how I can do a LinkedIn newsletter for Market Builder. See what you started, Paul? You can always drop me a line. You can email Tara. And this rounds out our session for today. I would like to thank both Paul and Stephen for an amazing session. This was great. I think we could have kept talking for a long time on the value of social media and how MSPs can get the most of it, most out of it. Thank you as well, Stephanie, for attending and talking about your upcoming boot camps focused on sales and marketing. And as always, have a great day and watch Market Builder for more great content. Take care, everyone. We'll talk to you on our next session.